All right, so this week we had seen a flaring up of fire back and forth, but really the big question in Ukraine continues to be how will people live under the circumstances they're in with shortages of water, not great access to food, especially with a winter that has been cold. And so that report was about UNHCR, but we want to also take a closer look at the International Committee of the Red Cross. And I'm very happy to have a guest who can tell us about that. We're joined by Alain Aeschlimann, head of the ICRC's delegation in Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So can you tell us a little bit about the humanitarian work of the ICRC in Ukraine at the moment?
So the ICRC has a very important operation in the east of Ukraine. I mean, it is our seventh biggest operation worldwide, and it's clear, and your broadcasting showed it very well. I mean, we have many challenges in the region now. It is cold, it is winter, it is densely populated. There were heavy fighting last year. I mean, for 2 years, people have been severely affected by the conflict. And we have accumulation also of huge needs, but also the duration of this hardship. And I think, yes, we can really consider that the situation is very difficult for a lot of people. And internationally, unfortunately, the crisis in Ukraine is very often seen as mainly a political crisis and less as a humanitarian crisis. And I think this is really important, and I thank you also to draw attention of the public to this.
Well, and it's hard because humanitarian crises have a lot to do with the media, where the attention is to a certain extent. And when you always have larger crises, there can be less attention on other crises that are quite horrible in their own extent, but maybe not as bad as some places, such as Syria. I want to pivot towards one issue. There's been a lot of controversy in Ukraine concerning the Ukrainian Committee of the Red Cross, in particular scandals involving the alleged selling of aid for money. Can you respond to that a little bit and explain the relationship between the ICRC and the Ukrainian Red Cross?
So it's not the Ukraine Committee, it is the Ukraine National Society of the Red Cross. So in all countries in the world, we have a national society. It's either Red Cross or Red Crescent Society. And it's right that in Ukraine there has been some accusation of ill use of money, and so we are totally independent from the Ukrainian Red Cross, and they are totally independent from us, meaning that we don't have a right, I would say, to look at the accounts and this type of issues. So now they started internal audit, so we hope that they will clear up all these issues. We are also seeing with them that they organize an international audit so that all elements are pretty well looked at, and that the society can resume its work as before, because they are doing a really very great job, and it's unfortunate that these issues are coming up, and then for the public, it's they remember more this element than
the negatives than the positives.
What is done.
Well, I mean, a big part of it with anything is how you move forward, how you deal with everything, and I know. For many Ukrainians, there's the issue of some degree of reconciliation, and for people who've lost loved ones in particular, the issue of closure. The ICRC in general is involved with missing persons, trying to find out what's happened to people. Could you talk a little bit about that work in Ukraine and where it stands today?
Yes, with pleasure. So we are doing a lot of relief, assistance, food distribution, etc. We're also visiting detainees, but also a major issue we are working on, it is the issue of missing persons. In all armed conflict, you have a large number of people who are unaccounted for. It can be members of the army, it can be civilians, it can be members of, fighters. And it's very important to look at this as early as possible. So we have a close cooperation with the authorities on different issues. It's legal framework. It is also to tell families to contact us or to contact the authorities, to mention cases, to establish lists. And we have also a strong cooperation with the forensic institutions, morgues, etc., because they're also in charge of identifying mortal remains. We also propose to have a platform of dialogue between all those involved in the conflict, or which can have some interest also to share information. So we hope that this can also move forward.
All right, one other point, maybe you want to
I wanted to ask, in following up on that, how successful has the International Red Cross been in getting this dialogue and this cooperation from the occupied side, from the separatist side, because obviously they also have their own missing persons and their own prisoners. Can you talk a little bit about that? How hard or easy has it been to talk to them?
We have, I would say, more or less the same type of cooperation with regard to missing persons. Also, for example, we attended some operation of recovery of bodies at Donetsk airport. So it's very important that also they apply, I would say, international standards. And we hope that, as I mentioned, we can strengthen the dialogue, that we can have more exchange of information on missing cases, and also work for identification.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Just to remind everyone, we have Alain Aeschlimann, head of the ICRC delegation in Ukraine, here in the studio today. We'll be right back.